Which Side Podcast is a proud member of the Which Side Media Collective.
This episode isn't sponsored by anyone.
But we really need someone to help sponsor these episodes. So if you could sponsor an episode, go to our website, donate $10.
Whichsidepodcast.com.
And we'll plug anything you want.
Yeah.
For reals.
Maybe.
As long as it's vegan.
Yeah.
Or anarchist. Or just cool.
I mean, it doesn't have to necessarily be vegan by default. Like, you know, if you make rings,
they're vegan.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. But
this is episode 80.
Yeah, we have Dr. Lauren Corman on. Dr. Lauren Corman is a professor at Brock University and teaches classes in critical animal studies. She also was on air with Animal Voices,
which is one of the radio shows that we have to thank for allowing. Like, they were the forefathers. Mm-hmm. I don't like the term forefathers. They were at the forefront of, broadcasting, veganism. Pre-podcasting. And now they new people have taken over since she was on, and they're still doing episodes and they're still podcasting. So check that out also. What events do we have going on this week?
In Salt Lake, we have Aragorn and Scott Crow are going to be talking at the Boing Anarchist Collective.
What? Both of them?
Yes. You can go to that. It's at 6 p.m. Boing Anarchist Collective. Scott Crow will also be talking earlier that morning at Weber State University.
I'm going to try my best to go. But
they will be different talks.
It's finals this week for me.
Really?
I'm really stressed.
Don't stress.
Yeah. But did you know that May 23rd, 1903, in Philadelphia, there was a child textile workers strike?
I did not.
Yeah. I get these. I have the Slingshot Personal Organizer. If you like it, buy one. They're awesome.
And you can keep yourself organized.
I don't write in mine because it's a piece of art by itself, but there's plenty of room to write.
I know plenty of kids that do write in it, though. It's just a daily planner, pretty much, with awesome facts.
I love it. One of the things I like about it the most, we're doing this huge plug for them.
Yeah, they don't pay us.
No, but I just like them. Is that in the back there's a huge guide of collectives and organizing and speeches. So like you can look at here, let me see here. In Switzerland or the Netherlands, they list 14 different collectives that you can get in contact with. So if you want more information or if you're visiting or whatnot. And they break it down by states and provinces. It's amazing. I love it.
So we got New Zealand on here? Yeah, right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got 128 House, Black Heart Info Shop, Black Rose Collective, just to name a few. Shout out
check
to
them
New
out.
Zealand.
If you don't have a local info shop, get it at an online info shop like AK Press.
That's where I got mine.
I hope you guys enjoy this one. I had a lot of fun.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side? Which side are you on? 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 Which side are you on?
Hello?
Hello.
Hello.
Hi there.
Hi, I'm Jordan.
Hi, Jordan.
And I'm Jeremy, so you can tell us apart.
Okay.
How are you today?
I'm doing all right. I'm concerned about the folk arts music festival that's across the park, and they're playing some. Now they've moved into some drumming.
I was hoping for the flutes.
Okay, well, the flutes appear to be done for now, but they might come back.
A funny side note, I grew up with my father making and playing wooden flutes.
Oh.
So I've heard a lot.
Okay. So can you actually hear the music?
No, we
not
can't.
at all.
Oh, okay.
We are having a little bit of feedback from you, though. You're kind of sounding robot-y. Can we try restarting Skype real quick?
Did I not tell you that I'm a robot?
darn it.
There's no Skype, gentlemen. I'm sorry. No, we can try that again. Hi there.
Oh, that's perfect.
Way better.
Oh, great. Oh, good.
So
Still can't hear the flutes or the drums, though, unfortunately.
Oh, okay. Well, they did actually come back.
I'm
Great.
I'm a little disappointed. I really wanted to hear those flutes.
I love that.
So, do you ever demand that people call you doctor?
Oh, this is funny that you just mentioned this because not that in particular, although when I make a hotel reservation or book a flight, I do like using doctor because the whole description of Miss, Mrs. and Ms.
Oh, yeah.
It's just a little bit frustrating. And I had someone at a restaurant the other day call me Miss. And it's just funny. I don't usually get my back up about stuff like that. But for some reason, it just kind of rubbed me the wrong way because Miss being an unmarried woman. And I don't know, it's not really too big of a deal for me, but I do like the gender neutrality of doctor. That's been enjoyable thing. Students, nobody's forced to call me doctor. Most people call me Lauren. But yeah, on the gender side of it, it's been kind of nice.
That's really funny that you... Whoa.
We're getting a weird feedback again.
Oh, are you?
It's not a Skype thing.
It's a doctor.
It must be a doctor thing.
It's definitely a doctor.
Where's
I don't even know the difference between Miss and Mrs. and I've never used them in my life.
No, I haven't either.
I did a little bit of research today.
Yeah.
On it. I'm actually not sure. I think commonly it's understood that Miss is an unmarried woman, and Mrs. means that you're married, or I think that it can also be if you're widowed and you still want to have that title. And then Ms. means you don't know, so when you're addressing a woman that you don't know, or if that woman chooses to designate herself as such. But I'm not sure. There was some debate, as there is on the internet, about these terms. And how much comes from mistress, which generally you don't usually want to call a group of women or a woman that you just met, but maybe, I don't know. So yeah, I'm not actually sure. It was sort of something that I bookmarked for today to look into more.
Okay, I get the mistress, correlation. That makes sense now that I think about it.
Yeah.
But those are terms I've never used in my daily life ever.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely, it's a definitely gender parsing, right? Because you just have Mr. Like, casually people will say Mr. and that's kind of, you're just a Mr. And then, yeah, it's interesting, right? That there's this categorization of women in different ways. And you get ma'am sometimes too. I mean, I guess people probably call you guys sir.
Yeah.
I use sir and ma'am sometimes.
Yeah.
But I usually to my parents to make them mad.
Oh, yeah.
Because they hate those terms because it's so formal.
Yeah. Is this part of the interview? Because this is a hilarious way to start the interview.
We don't cut anything out.
I don't really care about these. Like, it doesn't really matter. But I just noticed the other day someone called me Miss, and I was like, really? I don't know. So,
do you prefer a certain pronoun?
Professor, Doctor, Lauren, PhD? No, I don't. So do you mean so a pronoun, like a gender pronoun?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I go by she.
Okay.
But I appreciate you asking. I mean, that's a whole nother big conversation about gender and pronouns, but yeah, the English language, it's difficult, to position yourself maybe as somewhere more neutral. I think it's interesting to see the conversations that are unfolding right now about, other languages that use gender neutral pronouns, or what would that mean to use a gender neutral pronoun here, or how much does it work to use they or their? I don't know. Those conversations are ones that I watch. I think they're interesting. So
I like the idea of it, but a lot of times I get really confused. And like if someone is talking about someone and they're using the they pronoun, I'll oftentimes think that they're talking about two different people.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's just what it is, but
Yeah.
I wish there was something better.
Yeah. Yeah. Some people are proposing or have proposed like HIRS, I think, as a gender neutral pronoun.
The one that I like, I can't remember where it started picking up. It was in an urban city in the United States, but the younger generation started using the term yo as a gender neutral pronoun.
Okay.
And it's really prominent in this city. And so I'm kind of hoping that one kind of takes off because
Yeah.
They did studies too about it.
Yeah,
right?
they've done a couple studies on it.
And they had like 90% of the youth totally identified with yo and used it in their daily lives.
Yeah, in a totally neutral way.
Send me your studies. That sounds really interesting. Yeah.
It was on, I think, the NPR program Radiolab, I think, did a whole thing on it. I could be wrong on who was doing it, but I know there was an NPR program all about it.
I'd like to read it again. You briefly mentioned it a few months ago, so I'd like to read it again.
Yeah.
Very cool. Is this part of the interview? I know I've asked that already.
Yeah, we don't really interview. We just shoot the shit.
Yeah, we like to hang out.
But it started, I guess.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
We only do this so we can talk to people that we think are awesome.
Okay.
So, yeah.
But I mean, if you want us to cut it out, we can.
How did you get involved doing radio?
I got involved doing radio. I guess originally I was coordinating the University of Manitoba, the Women's Center there in probably 1998 or so. And they had just started, the University of Manitoba had just started up a new radio station, and they kind of let people do whatever they want. And so there was a collective of people who were involved with the Women's Center, and we did a show which was essentially we just got on the air and just talked shit about whatever we wanted, and people called in and we would talk about, we would talk about a whole series of things that we thought were fun, and that's kind of how I got my feet wet with it. And then I moved to Toronto in the early 2000s to start my master's, and I was basically moving to Toronto and kind of regretfully leaving women's studies behind in my undergraduate degree to do a master's in environmental studies, because I wanted to talk about animal issues in relationship to feminist theory and critical race theory and some of the things that I'd already been learning about. But I couldn't really do that very easily in women's studies, so I came to Toronto to pursue graduate work in environmental studies, where I could talk about animal issues in that kind of way that I wanted to. And at that time, I started to meet with other activists in Toronto, and I was really excited to meet some like-minded individuals who I thought were doing some interesting and radical stuff. And I met a few women who wanted to start a collective called Feminists for Animal Rights. And then from there, we had done maybe two different meetings, and then one of the main sex worker activists in Toronto approached Feminists for Animal Rights and asked us to do a sex worker panel that would be featuring sex workers talking about their perspectives on animal rights. And we wanted to do that. We thought it was important. It was something that was missing from the dialogue in the feminist community about animal rights issues. So we asked the larger organization, Feminists for Animal Rights in the United States, if we could do that panel, and they said no. They said that we wouldn't support, sex workers or something that would promote sex work any more than we would promote animal exploitation. And so we were pretty upset about that, because we felt like the absence of sex workers' voices in conversations about feminist animal rights theory, which often talks about pornography and prostitution, should include sex workers' voices. So from that point, after our very initial stages of being involved with Feminists for Animal Rights, we disbanded, and that sex worker activist was Miracele Ross was doing the radio show Animal Voices. And it just coincided with, at the time, that as we were disbanding and she had asked us to do this panel, that she also wanted to hand over the radio show to someone new. And I think she felt that our collective of women at the time were good candidates to take on the radio show. So we started with Animal Voices. Me and one other woman from that collective started with Animal Voices in 2001. And so thus began my decade-long tenure with that show. That's a long answer. I hope that's okay.
Oh yeah, yeah. What kind of experiences did you have, like with doing the radio show?
Oh, it was fabulous. I mean, it was definitely a huge learning curve. It was enormously intimidating to speak with people that were heroes. I mean, I've gotten to speak with people like Linda Burke, who I had been reading for probably 10 years by the time I had interviewed her. And it was really exciting to have my scholarship that I was doing, where, usually you're just reading people and writing about them and maybe talking about them in class. But because so much of the contemporary animal rights theory it's so, there's so much going on right now. And there was just this amazing opportunity to read about things, to write about it, and then also to have a dialogue with people. So it was really exciting. And it was also really exciting just to try at the time. I mean, it was the early 2000s. Podcasting really hadn't taken off yet. And it sort of felt like one of the few bastions of animal rights and liberation media. So it felt really important to keep that show on the air. It had originally started in 1996, and I took carrying that torch forward really seriously, because there weren't a lot of places where you could hear, non-crappy perspectives on animal rights and liberation. And it was also a place that we could talk about intersectional theory. It was like, it was a space for me to connect with other people who saw animal rights in relationship to other social justice and environmental issues. And that was hugely exciting. And it was really inspiring to speak with activists who had been in the movement for, 20 years, or ALF, activists who, for the most part, had been silenced in the movement, or just people just didn't know their perspectives. And then you have a chance to talk with somebody that has, decided to do those sorts of actions. And it just, it gave us an opportunity, me and the collective of people that I worked with over the years, an opportunity to really highlight a lot of marginalized perspectives within the movement. And that was a huge honor for me. A huge honor. And also live radio is kind of like improv, and I did that in high school. Someone throws you like a tuba and then says, you're under a bridge with a troll, now go. And it's like, I don't know. I like the having to stay on your toes about it all. It was always a challenge. So,
well, on a side note, I can hear flutes.
Oh yeah. We did a lot of international programming too, which is so humbling. At the time I just didn't really know very much about that, what was going on with the animal rights movement all over the world, and that we could use the resources at the radio show to call people in countries all over the world and hear about the kind of grassroots work that they were doing. That was pretty inspiring as well.
What was the range for the radio show? Was it like syndicated and all that?
Yeah, I think, and it's CIUT, so that's the University of Toronto Community and Campus Radio Station. That's where we were broadcasting out of, and that's where the show still broadcasts out of. There's friends/students of mine who do that show now, and the actual broadcast range is really big. I think you can actually get it in Buffalo from Toronto, and I can listen to a radio show. I can listen to it here, which is about 2 hours outside of Toronto. I can listen to it over the radio as well, and then it has the podcast range. So we've had a lot of international listeners that have listened to us that way. So
that's great.
Yeah. Now it's syndicated on CFBU, which is the St. Catharines campus community radio station here. So the folks who do the show now, sometimes they'll use the studio that's just down the street.
Has the university ever come in and said, maybe you shouldn't talk about these type of topics, or try to censor it or tone it down in any way?
That's a good question. So when I was doing the show through CIUT, I wasn't a University of Toronto student. I was a York University student. And there would be check-ins every once in a while with the program director or the station manager, who encouraged us to show the other side, as he put it. And those were kind of ongoing conversations, but we were never told not to. I mean, we had to operate. We were more concerned about like, can we play this music on the air that drops the F-bomb like 5 times, or can we, is that going to be okay? Or, there's been this new case out, where they're saying this, as these perennial stories go, like some vegan family, their child is malnourished. And so, there's been this big thing about veganism is unhealthy. And so you just want to be really careful always if you're going to talk about kids, obviously, right? Mm-hmm. But I think the biggest thing for us is, and one of the things I really kind of kept my eye on the ball about was we really needed to, because we were operating in the context of a community radio station, we needed to make sure that we were getting our yearly or bi-yearly donors to donate to the CIUT fundraising drive. So as long as we were pulling in the quotas that we needed to meet, we were generally okay. And I asked a lot of devil's advocate questions on the air, which is something that I talked to about the program director and station manager. And that wasn't just because I wanted to kind of appease them, but just because I wanted the show to appeal more to than just a converted animal rights kind of audience. I really wanted to get the people that would be skeptical, or, I had the experience just a few months ago where I was taking a cab and I jumped in the cab, and the guy, who was like probably in his mid 60s, like white guy, was listening to animal voices in the cab. And I was like, what do you think of this? And he's like, oh, they're talking about the spring bear hunt, and I think it's blah, blah, blah. And it was like, you have an awareness that you're going to be reaching a whole big range of people. So we wanted to speak to activists, but we wanted to speak with people who would be skeptical. So I think because I did a lot of people would say that such and such, that maybe that was one of the ways that I avoided some of that criticism. But we were told, to feature more of the other side. And when I said, well, what does that mean? Does that mean including like people who own slaughterhouses? Like, what does that mean to show the other side? Like, we're kind of already in the other side, and culturally and socially speaking. So then they just didn't really give me much of a response to that. So
did you ever walk away from an interview and just be like, I totally fucked that up?
Totally. Absolutely. All the time.
You want to share one of those experiences?
There was, there was just a couple that went really wrong. But it's hard to talk about them. I don't want to call anybody out or make anyone, I don't know. Like, there was an interview that I did that I thought was going to be like a sexy, fun interview about Valentine's Day. And we were going to interview somebody who makes vegan harnesses and other sex toys. Uh-huh. And I thought it was going to be kind of a cheeky interview. And we were also going to do something on fair trade chocolate. And I ended up interviewing somebody, and I guess she had I didn't know it at the time, but she had somebody who had passed away quite suddenly. And so the interview just was really difficult because she was clearly upset and sad, but I had no context for it. And so I came in really thinking we were going to have this lighthearted kind of chit chat, and that was really hard. I felt terrible about it. I think that, sometimes what happens is that people, and I think to their credit, they want to make sure that they're showing up for their obligations, but sometimes that meant, that people weren't necessarily on. And I know that I'm not always on either. People have stuff come up in their lives. Or Ray Sakura, who is a favorite of mine, we had her on the show a number of times. She did an interview that was kind of stilted and difficult. She had water, I guess, that was flowing down her stairs. Her house was flooding in the midst of the interview. And so you're kind of scrambling, trying to figure out why you're not able to get on level with somebody. And then you realize that there's other stuff going on, and not to take it personally. But there was just some interviews too that I think that people came in, we had different expectations. Like there was one person that I interviewed, and I asked a lot about specifics of the text. And she was frustrated because she didn't know we would be talking about particular passages. And I didn't think that was going to be an extraordinary task or something that was going to be kind of confrontational. And she saw it that way, where I was saying, oh, could you talk more about on page 57, you say such and such. Isa Shonda Moskowitz was a hilarious experience. I'm sure she wouldn't mind me sharing this. And I think actually it's still online, where she had just done vegan cupcakes take over the world, which I guess she made about 4,000 cupcakes in the creation of this book. And so when I got her on the air, again, I was thinking it's going to be such a lighthearted interview, and we're going to talk about vegan cupcakes, and who's not going to like that? And I opened up something, just a real softball kind of question about what's your favorite cupcake? And she said, I made 4,000 cupcakes for this book, and I just don't want to talk about cupcakes. I was like, oh no, what, like, how do you do the rest of an interview from that point? But over the years, like now I've gotten to know her a little bit better through the interviews that we've done. And I know that part of it is she has a very dry sense of humor. And so it's sometimes just difficult you don't have a lot of the information that you would otherwise have when you're in person. And so sometimes it's just trying to pick up on what's somebody's sense of humor or their dry sense of humor. Or in that case, actually, I think she legitimately just was burnt out on cupcakes, and understandably so.
For sure.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
I would look back at our entire first year and be like, what the fuck were we doing?
Why is that?
Because we had no idea what we were doing.
It's pretty true. I feel bad. What was that?
I was going to say, how did that translate, though? So if you didn't know what you were doing, but did that mean the quality wasn't there? Or you felt like you didn't ask good questions? Or
both?
Yeah. It was a learning process for both of us, for sure. And I look at some of like our interviews that we did. For example, like, I don't care. Will Potter. Like, yeah. We did an interview with Will Potter.
Yeah, we thought it would be really lighthearted and really.
But I think Will Potter is used to doing really cut and dry, Q&A kind of interviews, and
he had just finished an NPR interview right before,
and we just wanted to shoot the shit, and so it was like it was taking everything in us that, like, we were trying to be like, what are your favorite hardcore bands, and he wants to talk about ag-gag laws, which is understandable because super important to talk about it, but I think like we didn't know how to approach that when we were doing it. Like, we didn't know that we should have just transitioned and talked about that instead of trying to push.
We kept pushing and
pushing. And so definitely learning.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, that's the thing, right? You learn how to be more responsive to people and to kind of establish that rapport. And then sometimes it's not really about you, they're coming with their particular days or whatever, it's just in the air that it's not going to be great. But sometimes you get those interviews where it's like the needle's in the groove and everything feels awesome. Those are special.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah. But we made it a conscious decision to keep all of them up. So you can go back to the very, very first one we ever did, which I don't want anyone to ever really listen to. But it's there for, Yep.
We debated whether or not to take him down, but we.
So who's been your favorite person you've interviewed?
I'm not sure. I probably interviewed about 300 people. They're favorites for different reasons. Joanna Macy was. That's kind of an embarrassing interview because my voice shakes because I was so excited to talk to her. She's somebody who's, I don't know, she was just somebody I had read for a really long time, and she's interested in systems theory and Buddhism, and I think a lot of the international shows really were huge ones for me. When I started speaking with Sharon Nunez from Igualdad Animal in 2006, it was really when they were starting to get off the ground. And so that was a really exciting time to start to document some of that and bring some of their perspectives to a North American audience. I think that they had made some headway, but we felt like we could provide a platform for them. And then over the years, having a chance to talk with them as the organization has grown and changed was really exciting. I had a great interview with Sheila Hamanaka about anti-racist perspectives on the animal movements, and for some reason we just clicked on the air, and people have said that they've really enjoyed that interview. David Nybert, who's a sociologist who does stuff on capitalism and political economy in relationship to animal issues and other issues of oppression. He's a huge hero of mine, and every time I've got a chance to talk to him, I'm pretty much just buzzing afterwards. So some of the interviews that we've done with a lot of the feminist scholars, I guess, as well. Donna Haraway was a huge interview for me. I knew that would be an extremely contentious interview, that I did that one because she's a controversial figure within, I guess, animal politics and critical animal studies and post-humanist thought. So that one was pretty big because I had spent so many years of my graduate work and then my PhD dissertation kind of having a conversation with Donna Haraway's work. So when I actually got a chance to interview her, that was really mind-blowing. So
you teach in the area of critical animal studies, right?
Yeah. So my position is in sociology. So I'm a sociology professor with a specialty in critical animal studies, and the courses that I've taught so far at Brock. So I was hired at Brock University in St. Catharines. I was hired in 2009, and my teaching has been exclusively in the critical animal studies stream. Although that's going to change next year. I'll be doing 3 animal classes and then a contemporary social theory class as well, which is one of the core sociology classes.
How do the students usually take those classes? Are they super receptive, or do you get like the students that want to challenge a lot of things?
I would say they're really receptive, and they also want to challenge things. I really try to build that into the classes, that the point is to critically engage with the material. In fact, I put people on the syllabus that I don't necessarily agree with even. And often I'll set up the weeks as 2 people that they're reading 2 different articles with oppositional views. Or complimentary, or someone's critiquing the first person that they read. So I try to structure it as being pretty dialogical, and that the point is critical thinking. So, and I really invite that kind of dialogue throughout. My teaching evaluations have been really strong, which I've been excited about, because the material can be so emotionally troubling and really overwhelming, especially if you're going to talk about animal issues in relationship to other issues of oppression. It can feel like a lot to tackle, but I've really found it fascinating, actually, that people have been so receptive. Even in my 4th year animals in the law class, I get a lot of students who are in the policing stream, or they're in the criminology stream, and this might be the first animal class that they've taken. And these are people who who are looking to become police officers.
Yeah.
And I get these really, I get people in there then who end up being really passionate about these issues and really seeing the connections to some of the other critical criminology and sociology work that they've done. So it's worked out pretty well. Maybe I'm somewhat insulated from it because I'm the professor, but on the evaluations, people have been really, really receptive. There's a couple that I got recently that said that they found the material biased. But I guess, that would probably be a charge against most of the sociology department as well, who I know get similar kinds of things, because you're teaching from a critical perspective. So, I know, I am biased. I do think that animals matter, and and I'm happy to have those biases be transparent. I think especially with something like animals in the law, if I'm going to do justice to that emerging field, it's people who are engaged with animal law are attorneys and scholars who think that animals matter and are trying to mobilize the legal system to do something positive for animals. Yeah. So there's already, I can make an argument. I just try to be transparent about the kind of pedagogy that I do. So how I teach, I just say, this is what I'm doing in this class, or I try to stay flexible to the students' interests, or I'll say, I'm really struggling with this. Like my students, we had a huge conversation that happened in my 4th year students just a couple months ago, because we were talking about, one of the weeks that we did was talking about animal sexual assault. And, a lot of the students hadn't looked at these issues before. It was totally new material. It's extremely emotionally troubling.
Mm-hmm.
And I was saying, look, I find this stuff difficult to talk about and like difficult to talk about, to think about and to talk about. And I'm wondering if I should put it on the syllabus next year. And what do you guys think? And it's this kind of ongoing conversation where I'm trying to meet the students where they're at, but we're actually having a conversation about the pedagogy itself, if that makes sense. So I think that can be a bit, it's not, I really try not to make it too, although I'm giving them the marks, I try to be aware of the hierarchy and to try to trouble that kind of top-down way of learning. And I try to focus on dialogue, which I think is part of the reason why generally the courses have been well received.
Do you get any students who walk away maybe like possibly turning vegetarian or vegan, or do you get those students in there that are like the pet students that already are vegan?
Oh, you actually get a really wide range. I mean, I've definitely had those amazing moments where students write to me and say, this course changed my life and I became vegan, or my family's vegan now. And that's been really gratifying and exciting to see people not only become vegan, but to get motivated to actually be involved in the issues. And then, for the people that are already on board, sometimes it can just be such a relief to be surrounded by other people that also think that these issues matter. And so you get kind of a range. Or I've had students before that have been kind of, they've said to me, I had one student who came and was crying in my office and said, look, I was the jerk in the class last year that kept rolling her eyes. And she said, I just wasn't ready for this. I just didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to think about it. Now, I took another one of your classes and it finally kind of opened me up. And she was just crying and saying, I can't believe I haven't, I just didn't want to look at this stuff and I'm so ashamed of myself. And so it's interesting to see how sometimes people, they kind of progress with it. And it's important, I think, to kind of remember as an educator that I don't know, the kind of cheesy thing, but it's true. You're planting the seeds, and you do your best. You try to show up to the students and be responsive to them, but you don't really know how people are going to take up that information. So
what's your origin with being vegan? How did that come about?
It came about with propaganda.
Okay.
So it all started with punk rock for me. I moved out of my very small town in Manitoba in the mid-90s and went to the big city and got exposed to punk rock and thought that all of punk rock had great politics, just because the Winnipeg scene was really full of excellent people. And Propaganda was one of those bands, and it was the first punk show that I'd ever seen. And I think Chris Hanna was playing naked on the stage, and people were doing a bunch of obscene things. And I was like, oh man, this is punk rock. Wow. I think I was 17 or 18 at the time. Anyway, and there was a video that was playing because they, a lot of the punk shows they would do as a kind of an info sharing thing. They would have people with their organizations lining the sides of the venue. And there was a group called People Acting for Animal Liberation, and they were playing a video of a monkey being vivisected, I guess, and she or he was screaming. And I had just eaten at Taco Bell. My last meat meal ever was a beef burrito. And I looked over and I saw this animal. I guess I made the connection between that animal and the animal or animals that I just eaten. And Propaganda was just the soundtrack to, an emerging political consciousness. They were sort of talking about the perspective of critical animal studies before it was really even considered critical animal studies, or it was just in its nascence. They were people who were really smart. They were really smart guys who were trying to talk about animal issues and other issues of social justice, and they talked about them all together. And that's how I got into animal stuff. And I was interested in a boy who liked punk. That's an incentive there too, right? You want to get to know the music. Yeah. So that's kind of how it started for me. And then I stumbled into women's studies right at the same time. So that combination of women's studies and a really solid program at the University of Manitoba that was doing really great radical work, and then this soundtrack of punk rock and the art scene and the activist scene in Winnipeg was a pretty mighty combination, and that's kind of how I became interested in these issues.
So were you vegetarian first, or you just go right to being vegan?
I was vegetarian for a short period of time, and then I remember talking to the person that I was seeing at the time, and he had gone vegan. We had both gone, I guess, vegetarian pretty much at the same time, and he went vegan before I did, and he said, I think I asked him why, and he said, I just don't want to be a hypocrite. And I was like, what does that mean? You know, I kind of chewed on that for a while, and then it really hit me. I mean, when you look at the industries and, you know, the reasons that a lot of people are vegetarian, I mean, they translate to the dairy industry just as much or more so, right? So, and then as I learned more about feminist theory, which was happening at that time, you know, for me anyway, I started thinking about feminized protein and the exploitation of female reproductive systems, and that sealed the deal for me for veganism.
That I feel that happens with a lot of people. Myself, it happened where you just called like a hypocrite. I didn't realize why I was a hypocrite. I didn't even think about it. I had no idea about the other part of like dairy and egg production and stuff like that. And so I think it might be insulting, but it definitely gets the job done.
Yeah. I mean, I would never say that to somebody now. I really try to be very cautious about how I talk to people. But for me at the time, I was learning a bunch of really uncomfortable things. Like I had women's studies professors who were really dedicated to learning being uncomfortable. They were like, we're not going to apologize for you being uncomfortable because that's part of you growing. And it was a time of like, I would often think about kind of the image of being hung upside down and having all the change like shaken out of your pockets. Like that was that period of time for me. So veganism was kind of in the mix of just reevaluating so many things in my life in general, like learning about sweatshop labor and getting introduced to Chomsky and watching Manufacturing Consent, and just realizing just how infinite the layers of oppression are in our society and things that we're complicit in all the time. So it was part of that larger kind of radical rethinking of the status quo.
How did your friends and family react to your change?
It's been challenging. It was challenging with my family initially. My mom, which she denies this up and down, felt that it was very cultish to be vegan, that it was too extreme. But we didn't, I mean, my parents had divorced when I was 10, and that for the most part, my junior high and high school years were like, I was eating a lot of like Chef Boyardee and stuff out of cans and frozen pierogies and things like that. So it's not like there wasn't too much of a sense of you're breaking with the family by eating something different, because my mom was working shift work, and there wasn't like we were sitting down for family dinners or anything. I have a great mom. I don't want to make it. She was doing what she had to do. But yeah, I think that I had less of that than some people, where their families really have nurtured them with food, or it has more of a deeper cultural significance. And so that can sometimes be challenging for people. I didn't have that as much. I had more, you know, being in the university and being at the cafeteria and having like people be angry at me that I was eating vegan, or I've had, you know, friends' fathers yell at me because I was vegan. And that doesn't happen so much anymore. That was, you know, it was in the 90s. So, and I don't know if I just had better arguments now, or like, I love it when people ask me why I'm vegan, but people don't really ask me anymore. Now I wish I could go, right? Like, bring it on. I want to talk about it. But it's like, no, we don't want to go. We want to talk to Lauren about it. So, so it's gotten better. And I think at this point, I've just been vegan for so long that, you know, my family accepts it. So.
What's been the biggest change you've noticed since you've been vegan in the animal rights scene?
Mm-hmm. These are really good questions. The biggest change in the movement, or the biggest around veganism in particular, or
specifically the movement, but then we'll get to veganism in general after.
And we can talk about food.
Because vegans always have to talk about food.
I think there's been a growing acceptance and awareness that animal issues are indisputably linked to other issues of oppression. So I think, at the time when I started with the radio show, ecofeminists were trying to talk about intersections of oppression, and there were some other people as well. But the pockets were maybe a little bit smaller. I think that it's been heartening to see that there is there's more conversations happening and more work that's being done that's really trying to address the intersections of oppression. Or maybe those voices have always been there and they're just getting more airtime now, or they have more of a public platform. I'm not exactly sure. But I think with the rise of critical animal studies, which has tried to emphasize intersectional perspectives and to emphasize critiques of capitalism, that's been a major contribution. But there's just so many cool activists that are drawing connections, and also I think productively and constructively pushing back against the mainstream animal rights movement to kind of widen their analysis and to move away from thinking about veganism and animal rights issues in terms of your individual consumption practices, but to link it into larger issues of structural inequalities, and to think about how we produce them and how veganism and animal rights can hopefully challenge them, but to do it more around coalition building and solidarity. And then in terms of my own work, I guess the biggest shift for me over the years, and I think this is part of a larger shift that's happening, is to move away from talking about animals just as suffering victims and to talk more about agency and resistance. So it's not that you don't talk about animals being skinned alive or terrible things that happen to them within industrial contexts, etc., but you want to also emphasize the ways in which animals do resist, and they have richer versions of who they are outside of just the fact that they're suffering in these horrible ways and that they are victims in these ways. And so, with my own work with the radio show and doing interviews about the seal hunt, for example, over many years, Karl Orzechowski and I, we decided through that process that we were going to start talking about the seal hunts in a more complex way. So we had already been talking about labor issues and First Nations issues in relationship to the seal hunt, but we then started we sought out people that could talk about the seals themselves outside of just how they're hunted in these often very painful ways. So that was an important part of my own thinking about other social justice movements as well, because most other social justice movements, people aren't too hip on being thought of just as victims, right? It kind of reduces who they are in the world. So that kind of shift to thinking about animal voices being richer than just their victimhood was probably the biggest thing that's informed my own theory and teaching and the kind of work that I do now.
If you could see the movement change in any way, what would you want to see change within the movement, like focusing on something or change tactics? Is there anything that you'd see, like the direction you wish it was going?
I would love to see more, I guess, the things that I've tried to enact in my own research, right? So talking about really, I'd like to see a greater engagement with, are you still there?
Yeah.
Okay. I'd like to see a greater engagement with cognitive ethology. So cognitive ethology is the scientific study of animal minds and behavior. And that's not the only place that you can kind of think about animal minds and behavior. But people like Mark Beckhoff, who do amazing field work where he's really trying to pay attention to animals' lives, I think it's a really important contribution. I think it's a really weird thing that, like, you could be involved in the feminist movement and you would never think at some point that you're just done understanding women's lives, for example, or done understanding gender or how gender plays out in people's lives. You'd always think that you'd want to be always learning. But it's like sometimes people think like, oh, I'm kind of done now that I'm vegan. Like, we don't need to talk about animals themselves because we already kind of know what they don't like. And there's a kind of lack of curiosity or not seeing that it's relevant. And I think that if you're going to, as the animal movements do, see yourself as the representative of animals, you should probably do your homework a little bit more about who you're talking about. And I think that cognitive ethology is one way that we can deepen our understandings of animals. And I feel like we really have that responsibility. I feel that very deep responsibility within myself. So for example, I teach about whale culture in my Animals and Cross-Cultural Perspectives class. And I'm talking about whale culture not just because it's interesting, but actually because it tells us something really important about who whales are. And if you don't think about them as having cultural lives, you'd miss a whole series of important things about conservation efforts. So we see now that there's all these different conservation efforts, and they don't do too great because they're not willing to recognize that whales are cultural beings. But if you start thinking about their cultural and emotional and their social lives, for example, you realize that like some populations of whales don't have the bounce back that they might otherwise after they've been hunted to such low numbers. And that's because cultural knowledge has been lost. You have elders within a pod that have maybe been killed off, and they know where to eat when like conditions are bad or things like that, or if it gets hot. And so if you don't talk about that kind of complexity of animal lives, I think there's an argument that you just do less effective activism as well. You do less good job of representing them. And and I take my cue from other liberation struggles like the indigenous movements and third world women's movements that have been really adamant to talk about resistance and agency, and some of those kinds of cultural and social things that I'm mentioning. So I'd love to see that be emphasized more, and then those, that in combination with more intersectional analyses, which I think hopefully people are moving towards as well. But it's something like, I don't want to make it sound like I have all the answers. Like definitely see myself as someone who's always evolving and changing and learning new things as well.
Yeah, I would really love to see the movement go in the direction of equating it to more and other radical struggles. It's definitely a different perspective than a lot of people focus on. I feel like certain organizations, we all know who they are, they often will exploit in the name of animals to present their message, and I don't feel that that's the right approach at all.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it would be very interesting to see a different tactic in the mainstream animal rights movement for sure.
Yeah. Yes, agreed.
So earlier Jordan said he wanted to talk about food. So what's been the biggest change as far as vegan food is concerned for you?
So, sorry, can you rephrase the question? Like, what is my concern about food?
No, what's been like the biggest change, like from vegan food?
From mayonnaise to vegenaise.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, that's a good one. I actually can't buy veganese because I will eat it out of the jar, and that's all I'll eat for a week, which my friends think is really disgusting, and I think it's disgusting, but I can't. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I just sound so old when I say this stuff, but like the analogs have really been like the changes that we've seen in the cheese and meat analogs have been pretty awesome. Like you can have Daiya cheese that melts on nachos, and that's fun. So some of those things have been really exciting. Coconut ice cream, I guess, is really fantastic. Some of the cashew cheeses and nut cheeses are pretty fun. Is this what you mean? Like what the things that I've...
So you mentioned the ice creams. What is like your favorite ice cream right now? Because I remember before there was like fucking anything.
Right.
I remember like going, oh my God,
mix.
tofutti. And, that was the only option pretty much.
All I heard was you say the word fucking, and I was like, we're going to get booted off the air. I was like, oh no, that was live. Wait a second.
Yeah. That's what's so great about podcasts.
So what's like your favorite ice cream? This is the shit people need to know.
Yeah. I guess the thing is, I because I'm pretty sedentary with my job, I do a lot of sitting. I really avoid a lot of sweets, so this doesn't sound like it's not super fun. My commentary on food, it's like, I really like kale. Kale ice cream. I don't know. I guess like, is it called Better Pecan? That stuff is pretty awesome.
I'm not sure we have that in the
I've
States
never
yet.
heard of this.
Yeah, it's pretty fantastic. And like the coconut ice creams are good. I try to tell myself it's sort of good for me. Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of the coconut
I'm
ice
getting
cream.
older. I'm trying to take better care of myself. I don't eat a lot of sweets or things like that, which is not the answer that I want to give at all. I want to say like I like Rocky Road covered in chocolate, covered with cherries, but I don't eat a lot of it. I'm sorry.
I really try not to.
Well, you know what is the most boring interview we've ever done, and it was with that professor.
Oh God, no! I could. Yeah, there's some pretty bad ones.
Like, no, you're not nearly as boring. But
I'd probably say the same thing though. I'm definitely trying to eat healthier, but with all the things that come out, it's kind of bad. Like being vegan for a long time is when new things come out that you haven't been able to have for 10, 15 years, you're like, holy shit, I have to eat all of that. And that's not good for anyone.
Yes. I actually, I do remember the day when it was whatever the coconut. What is the coconut brand? It's not Coconut Bliss. It's the other one.
It's the So Delicious coconut.
Yeah, when they made those, they're not popsicles, but they're dipped in chocolate.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
I remember the day I had one of those. Like that's seared into my memory. So if people want to try a treat, that would be one. I don't think I had ever been so happy. It was really fantastic.
Have you had the tofutti
one?
drumsticks? It's a
no.
waffle cone with tofutti ice cream dipped in chocolate with chocolate crumbs on top.
Oh, I think I did have one actually with some friends. Like some of that stuff doesn't come here. But I think it was in Buffalo, and we had just went to go see Chomsky.
Mm-hmm.
And we were outside of, what would that be? The big one there. It's called Trader Joe's.
Okay. Yeah.
Maybe?
It's one of them.
Anyway,
Yeah.
and we had one of those, and that was pretty fantastic. Yeah. Melting in the parking lot.
You said you remember the day you had those. I remember the day those showed up in the grocery store. I'm like, yeah.
I have the chocolate in the tip of the cone.
They do.
It's the best. Yeah. See, food's fun to talk about.
It is.
I feel like you can't have a vegan conversation without talking about food.
No, I think I probably failed in that regard with a lot of the interviews that I did, because I didn't talk about some of those things. I think you guys you've progressed much quicker than I ever did. Like, it took me a while to start feeling a little bit like you could be more, like a little bit more cheeky with your guests and to have it be more relaxed. I think in the beginning it was like, oh my God, this is very serious. We're going to have a serious conversation. So that's good. It's important. I think it's actually, just to play the activist card, I think that it's important to not be seen as the humorless vegans anymore, and that to actually show that there can be some pleasure. I mean, as much as I'm talking about animals, showing that they're not just suffering, like showing that vegans can enjoy things like ice cream is actually, I think, important too. So,
well, we purposefully only play to the community that we're already a part of. Like, we're not trying to convert people. Mm-mm. Like, we're here to show that you're just normal fucking people.
We can have a good time outside of our activism.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's important too. I was just reading a book called Artist Animal, which I'm reviewing for a journal, and the author Steve Baker interviewed Sue Coe. I don't know if you guys know her work at all. She's pretty big animal rights painter, artist. And it was really interesting to hear her interview, because she was saying that she was actually doing most of her art for an animal rights audience, which I thought was cool. She was like, yeah, I want to help these people feel inspired and kind of keep them invigorated to do what they're doing. So that definitely has an important role. And just, to have some fun.
So how can people get in contact with you and follow you?
Well, there's, well, we're in the midst of developing it right now, but we have the Critical Animal Studies page, which is pretty easy to find at Brock. We have a concentration and minor, so it's not like you would come here to do a degree in Critical Animal Studies. You would do a sociology degree, and then you could take a concentration or minor. And there's so many different professors here at Brock, actually, who do Critical Animal Studies classes. There's a political science prof, a labor studies prof, visual arts, English, psychology. So I would say people can check out more about me and the work that I do by going to that website, which is, I can give to you guys, or you can just type in Critical Animal Studies Brock. We have a Facebook page that's sort of just starting as well. People tend to, I guess I've a lot of the listeners from Animal Voices have befriended me on Facebook. I'm not on Facebook a ton right now because I'm applying for tenure in the fall, and so I've really just been trying to stay on point and keep focused. But I'm always really receptive to people writing me. I have a Twitter account, people can write to me. I'm really easy to find too, just through the Brock website. If you type in Lauren Corman and Brock University, my professional email will come up. So, yeah.
Well, we end every interview saying "fuck, shit, damn." Would you mind saying it for us this week?
It's so many years of being on live radio show. You have to appreciate that this is quite significant for me. So it's fuck, shit, damn.
Woo! Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, you have a great night.
Thanks so much. I feel like I didn't ask you guys enough questions.
Well, do you have any questions that you want to ask us?
Well, I feel like just doing the whole show in reverse. So saying, what has been the best show that you've done, or where did you feel like things went really wrong, or those sorts of questions.
Let me see. Really, really wrong. In my mind, we had a show really early on where my daughter kept bugging us, so we just let her on, and that, in my mind, went horrible.
And I actually listened to it the other day because I was worried about it, and it came across as cute.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe.
How old is she?
What was that? I think
How old is she?
At the time, she was 5, I think. Yeah. She's 7 now.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So.
I wouldn't recommend doing that again.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't recommend doing that again either.
But it wasn't that bad.
No.
Going back. Yeah, I don't.
And one that went really well? Or who you were really excited about?
We just had Scott on from Earth Crisis.
Yeah.
And that one was big for me because we didn't actually set it up. It wasn't like we were seeking the interview.
Mm-hmm.
And when we first started, we wrote out a list of who would be amazing to have, and Earth Crisis was on that list, but they were never somebody that we would, openly try to contact. Mm-hmm. So it was really, really awesome for me that they kind of contacted us and worked it out that way. Yeah.
Wow. And have you both shared on the air why you went vegan, or how you got introduced to the politics?
I think I've shared before, and that was I witnessed a cow give birth when I was on an off-track program, and they named it after me, and so
wow.
I went back and it was missing, and I made the connection that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I went vegetarian at 11 and didn't really know anything about veganism, didn't even know what the term vegetarian was at the time, and my parents made me promise not to go vegan, which made me interested in it. What is this? Why shouldn't I do this? And just reading reading Animal Liberation. I mean, I read it when I was 11 for the first time, and I had to read it with a dictionary, and things like that just really pushed me. And when I was 13, I finally went against my parents' will.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Those are both really good stories.
Thank you.
I always feel mine's kind of yeah.
I could feel like I could elaborate on mine and make it really meaningful, but
yeah,
it's just what it was, I think.
Well,
cows are around here.
Yeah, it was really fun to talk to you guys. Thank you so much.
It's been a lot of fun. Thank you.
And I already said the words.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Well, you can always say it again.
You can say it again.
Just
It's
to get it, out of your system since you had to censor yourself for so long.
Okay, so fuck, shit, damn.
Awesome.
Awesome.
All right.
Have a wonderful night.
Have a great night.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
See
Bye.
ya. Bye.
Bye. This week we heard.
Crabby, a stepping razor.
Right now we're listening to.
6 fingers. Giant.
And as always,
El Comandantes.
which side are you on? Right now, whatever you're doing, we need you to do something very simple. Go to iTunes, rate and review us. That's it.
You can just open up iTunes, type in Which Side Podcast. If you don't have us, you can subscribe to us. And then just click the 5-star button and then type a little review like, you guys are awesome because anarchists are awesome. Or veganism's stupid, I eat meat, but I love these guys. Or veganism's awesome because it is, and the other guy that wrote that other comment is stupid. That kind of thing. It's great.
Yeah, I'd love to see a back and forth like that. So, iTunes, rate and review. It's pretty simple. Also, social media.
Yeah, you can go to whichsidepodcast.com, click on the social tab, and it will connect you with all of our social media accounts. And we offer things that we don't talk about on air sometimes, like giveaways, DVD giveaways that we've been doing recently. So stay connected with us.
I look forward to chatting with you.
I don't. But I will.
Fuck shit damn.
Fuck shizzle dizzle.
Which Side is produced by the Which Side Media Collective.